Hello and welcome to Getting Your Money's Worth, the show that focuses on value. I'm Judith West, and our guest today is Burton Rocks, author of What I Learned from Jackie Robinson and other sports books, which we'll talk about, and non-sports, and sports journalist, right? Hi, Burton. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the guest. You know, at first when I wanted to have you on, I was thinking of the latest book you wrote, Me and My Dad, Paul O'Neill. And I was a little disappointed when you sent me What I Learned from Jackie Robinson. But as I started to look through it, I thought how fitting that actually today you did, because Jackie Robinson was the one credited with starting the civil rights movement for equality in sports. And we are at a moment in time in this country when we had the first black man running for president. So it's kind of fitting that that this happened.
Jackie would definitely have been proud to see Barack Obama running in the race and doing so well.
Right.
And one of the best things that came out of that book was getting to know Jackie's daughter Sharon, who's a dear friend of mine because of the book. And you know, to hear the trials and tribulations he went through and how gentlemanly he was throughout the whole process. Right. I don't know if any of us would have had the intestinal fortitude to have remained that nice.
I wonder if, how many years ago was this? Was it in the 50s? How many years ago did this,
Jackie,
this epic start?
Jackie broke the color barrier in 1947.
1947, okay. I told you you're going to have to help me. This is not my strong suit, baseball memorabilia. But if we were to fast forward now, what do you think his point of view would be about the thing he fought all his life, equal rights for everybody?
I think that Jackie would be disappointed at the paucity of African American managers in sports. There really isn't. Are
there any? How many are there?
At one time, Frank Robinson. Not that many. I mean, less than a handful, which in sports terms, baseball terms, is really bad.
Well, there's plenty of players.
There's players, but even the percent of African American players in sports doesn't even make 10%.
Right. Yeah. You know, he fought. He's an icon. Jackie Robinson, an icon, and you tell of many examples in your book about how he handled himself both on and off the field. From your point, give us a couple of highlights.
Philadelphia was probably the worst city for Jackie. You know, Ben Chapman used to have the guys, manager of the Philadelphia Phillies, used to have the guys taunt Jackie from the dugout. Used to pay him $50, which at that point was a heck of a lot of money in the late 40s. Find them if they didn't taunt him. And fans there used to throw black cats out on the field. That was probably the worst city for him. Second probably was St. Louis, because the hotel, he couldn't even stay at the hotel. And it took a lot of his teammates a long time to realize that, whoa, we're going to our rooms and we're having all this great luxury and we're at a 5-star hotel and where's Jackie? Yeah, where's Campy? Where's Don Newcomb? Where are all these guys? And I think it hit ahead when they came back from, especially Nuke came back from Korea. And, you know, they had fought for their country. They had fought, Jackie had fought during World War II. They fought for their country in Korea. And still, here we are. It's good enough to die, but they're not good enough to stay at the hotel. And that was a crushing blow. And it really debilitated him physically. The stress took its toll on his life. I mean, Sharon told me that there was no need for her father to have died in his 50s at 52.
Right. Yeah. What was the event that prompted his retirement from baseball?
Well, he was diabetes.
Was it health?
It was health, diabetes, and he was going blind, and it was very upsetting for him. So he took a low profile after a while.
Right. How did you get, Burton? How did you get into this field, this niche that you have of writing about sports?
Well, probably from when I could actually speak. When I was 2, 3, 4, I loved to watch games on TV. I had life-threatening illness myself, which is why I was able to understand Jackie's story a little bit. I had asthma, but I had 3 code blues before I was 5. I had my first code at 2 before I could speak. So when you're in hospitals and you spend most of your youth in a hospital, the only thing to do if you have an IV in your left arm is write. Right. And I started keeping a journal. I started keeping a diary, which I still have, which I'm going to publish as a memoir. a sick child's view of life and the adults and how they interact. And I just got interested in sports journalism. I was good enough to make the team, not good enough to finish a season because of my health, so I decided to write about it.
Yeah. Let's move off to another area, though, because you mentioned something about there's nothing else to do when you're a sick kid but write. And read.
Read and write.
Right. You wrote a book, Tony and Me. You wrote that book with Jack Klugman.
Right.
It's an interesting story, that book. It's a book about friendship.
Right.
How is it that you wrote a book about friendship? Did that come about because of health with Jack?
It did. When
Tell us a little bit about that.
Jack's bouts with cancer were interesting to me from a health perspective.
But it was something special about his cancer. It wasn't just cancer. It was throat cancer. And after all, that's how he made a living with his voice.
Right. And he actually felt that it was robbing him of his identity. And at that point was really when his friendship with Tony cemented itself. And I had known Jack over the years through family. And I told him, I said, you really should write a book about your friendship with Tony. And you really should drive home the point that you don't have to, you can be friends at any age. And here were two men who had worked together for 40 years on this show, and they'd known each other a lifetime, but they never lunched together. They first developed...
You mean for all that time they were not friends?
They were friends in the professional sense of the word, but they never lunched together.
They seem so close on the screen.
They were, but once the taping stopped, Jack was a loner, and Tony would go out and he'd say, Jack, come to lunch, and Jack wouldn't do it. And it was Tony who forced himself on Jack when Jack was sick that allowed them to have a friendship and frankly allowed Jack to have a strong relationship with his own children.
Right. You know, you mentioned something about being sick as a youngster. I read something about Jack Klugman and his problem with cancer of the throat, the larynx, really turned his life in a very different direction. It's kind of funny in life how when people get sick, they seem to lose the very thing that is so vital to their own identity, as you put it. I just saw over the weekend this movie Diving Bell and Diving Bell and Butterfly. Right. The editor of Elle, who can only communicate with his left eye. This is a man that wrote words. I just read in yesterday's paper about Bobby Vitale, got his voice back. It's ironic.
It is. A lot of times God tests you that way.
Yeah, and you have to really come... Yeah, so what are some of the other friendships in this book, Tony and Me?
Basically, the fact that Jack was able to reunite with a lot of his other actor friends. He really wasn't close to people throughout his life. When the tapings stopped and the lights went out in the studio, he shut off.
Yeah.
And he's come out of his shell because of this, and he's tried to keep Tony's memory alive through the National Actors Theater.
Right. And he himself, too, became a spokesperson for the American Cancer Society. He did things... It was an interesting story in the book. Do you remember the story of how where he was his first spokesperson and there was no PA system?
Right.
Tell us the story.
Well, it was...
You'll tell it better than I can.
Well, there was no PA system, and basically here's a man who couldn't use his voice, and people to this day, they thought it then and they think it now. They think he's in pain. He's not in pain. He just can't project.
So here he was as a spokesperson of the American Cancer Society, and he was going to give out these Tree of Lives to cancer survivors.
Right.
And it was a hot day, and everyone is anxiously waiting for him. There's no PA system, and he can't project his voice. It was an amazing vignette in the book.
But the story propelled him to actually forge ahead with his acting in his later years and force himself to realize that, okay, these are my limitations. I might not get much better, but I still love to act, and why should it be robbed from me? Right. So he forged ahead. And again, he tells me to this day, I went to the racetrack with Jack last March together, and we spent the day at Hollywood Park, and he said to me, you know, life tests you, Burton. This you have to plod along, and you either have two choices. You could either give up and go home and pack it in, or you can forge ahead, and the choice is yours. The
choice is exactly. The other book that I had actually thought you were going to send me, the Paul O'Neill book, Me and My Dad. Is that the name?
Yes.
Yeah. Your books have very good stories in them, very heartwarming stories. Tell us the story quickly of that book.
I was intrigued about Paul's relationship with his father. I have a great relationship with my dad.
Your dad is a chemist.
My dad's a chemist, and he's a acclaimed author, and I'm actually the third generation in the family to do that. And I've had a
third generation journalist author?
Journalist, yeah.
Oh, wow.
My cousin was David Dortwood, who created Bonanza, and my dad had the energy crisis, so it was left to me. And when Paul's father died during the '99 World Series, I contacted him. I said, Paul, you've got to write a story about you and your dad and how close you were. He said, Bert, I'm not ready. A year later, I approach him. Bert, I'm not ready, but I'll call you at the end of the '01 season. He called me. He said, I'm ready now. I'm going to retire, and let's do the book. And I think the book's success tugged not at Paul's career, because he wasn't the charismatic player of certain players we've had in New York sports. He wasn't the Mike Piazza girl magnet. But his story about a father and a son resonated with people all over the country. Regis.
What was special about that relationship?
It was special because it was about a father's genuine love and encouragement for his son to do what he liked. Instead of discouraging him from something that only 1 in a million can accomplish, he encouraged him.
Paul was very successful, though, as a baseball player. Right.
He's a phenomenal Yankee, a legendary Yankee.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think his true success lay in what people recognized from him as a hardworking, blue-collar player.
That worked. You know, you're a young guy. You're certainly, if you're not at the start of your career, you certainly have many more years ahead of your career. You've had this wonderful life of all these people. Don't you feel like your life is a treasure for you?
It is. In fact, I'm collating all the anecdotes from all of the hundreds of celebrities that I've met and the personal experiences that people don't know about, and putting it in a book about what it's like of a writer's journey, a young writer's journey
with this.
With this.
Is that book coming? That book is in you and coming out?
That book is almost finished, and it will be finished within the next 2 months.
Okay. Well, we have a very short time left, so you have to promise me that when that book is out, you'll come back and tell the viewers about it.
Absolutely.
It was a pleasure having you on, Burton. I really appreciate it. The book that Burton sent me, not the only one he has, is What I Learned from Jackie Robinson. You're watching Getting Your Money's Worth. I'm Judith West. Thanks for watching.